So players are not being recognized as workers, correct? Why? Yeah, anybody?
So the reason that they're not being recognized as workers is because then they would have to pay them. It's really quite simple. There was a quote, I remember there's a film that's been made out of this article, and they asked a question to Miles Brand, who was the former head of the NCAA, and they said, well, this journalist asked him, he said, well, why don't you pay the players? He says, well, because they're amateur. I said, well, why are they amateur? Well, because we don't pay them. Like, you can't argue with that, right? So the reason they're not workers is because then he'd have more costs. I mean, it's a nightmare. He'd have to pay more money, and that would then put an even bigger hole in his budget. So what's happening now is that with the unionization effort, are we there yet?
Go ahead.
Almost.
I just wanted to move this up to it.
Is that there's a common law definition of what an employee is. And it's about having a contract, providing a service, being under the control of someone, all of these elements of being an employee. And it's very clear when you look at it, and the National Labor Relations Board, the regional board in Chicago agreed that college players meet all of those requirements and therefore should be defined as an employee and should have the benefit of workers' compensation, all the rights that go along with that. Health and safety in the workplace, all of that stuff. And so that is the basis for the unionization effort in Northwestern. Actually, if you look at the College Athletes Players Association, they're on their list of demands, you won't find pay. You'll find health and safety issues. You'll find some of the transfer issues, some of these other things. Those are really some of the key things. The concussion issue is a massive issue now for players. And so those are some of the things they're focusing on, and they'll get those protections if they're recognized as employees. Now, unfortunately, we'll see where the end game ends up, but unfortunately they're meeting massive anti-union resistance from the NCAA, from the coaches. They do not want to have to deal with a union. And the irony of it is, as I pointed out earlier, is that really we're talking about you're forming a union to fight for individual bargaining rights, which in essence, that's sort of a conservative argument. So why do we have this strange kind of thing happening? But that's the dynamic.